IDERHA, and we are so happy again to hear why IDERHA and what we need and what our aims and what are your plans if you would like to implement IDERHA in Austria as one of the implementation of the EHS. So the microphone is yours, Christian.
Thank you very much, Radha, for the invitation. And IDERHA would definitely not be where it is without you. I still remember very well when we met for the first time. That's about 2 years ago, and now we are really well into the project of IDERHA. IDERHA is an acronym, as you can see. It stands for Integration of Heterogeneous Data and Evidence towards Regulatory and HTA Acceptance, because we really try to address 2 areas of focus about health data. On the one hand, we want to drive the technical implementation and take this forward. That will be very much the focus of our call today. But at the same time, a lot of innovation is stopped because regulatory and HTA acceptance are questions that need to be solved. And here it's really about working closely together with all stakeholders, patients, clinicians, regulatory authorities, sitting around a table and really discussing how do we bring health innovation towards the implementation and clinical use. And that's basically also why we have the subtitle that we really aim to improve the clinical decision-making and enhance patient access to health innovations through better use of health data, because we truly believe that health and health data can and will lead to the revolution that we see that ahead within in healthcare based on health data, and with the digitalization that is taking place in these days. We are now laying the foundation. It's great to have partners like the ones that organized this meeting today. We are focusing on lung cancer within IDERHA. IDERHA is a project that's financed through the Innovative Health Initiative. It's a big public fund from the European Union, but all the technical infrastructure that we are developing will be disease agnostic. Lung cancer will be our core area of focus, however, within the project. And what we are definitely aiming to do within IDERHA, that we're not setting up it as a project that comes to an end, but really see the funding from the European Union as a funding for like a startup, like an investment that they're doing. And we are going to meet already next week authorities from Austria as well, and when we are in Vienna, to have discussions how the IDERHA infrastructure can potentially be also used in Austria beyond the project. But before no further ado, I just go into the project and to really say where we stand for and what we really would like to drive. As I said before, it's an infrastructure. We built an open disease agnostic federal data space, which means that the data stays where it is, to really connect, access and use digital health data, really focusing on real world data. Any kind of data will be usable. However, within IDERHA, we're focusing on DICOM and OMOP data because our focus is on the connectivity, not on the data sources itself, and then develop the policy recommendation and consensus about health data access and heterogeneous health data use for regulatory and HTA decision-making, with HTA being the health technology assessment that is done in order to bring, for example, drugs or new medical devices onto the market. For this, I'm really proud to present that it's really 33 leading experts from 10 countries in Europe, but also non-EU support from US and beyond, came together in order to make happen what we are aiming to do so in IDERHA. So we've got a really strong academic and research teams together that come from the technical expertise, but also from the data expertise and the regulatory expertise, as well as legal expertise, to bring all of these aspects together, like a 360 perspective. Then we've got strong support from the industry that obviously has high interest to take these aspects forward, because research and innovation is the source blood of our being, and we truly believe that real-world evidence can only improve the innovations that we are taking into consideration right now. Patient organizations play a major role. Clinical societies and also SMEs are very important to drive that kind of innovation. Why have we chosen those? Why have those people come together? Why have those experts come together? Those experts really come together because they have expertise in that field. What we're really trying to do with an IDERHA to minimize as much as possible, to reinvent the wheel or do things again, but to leverage what is already out there and bring it together in a novel way. That's complex enough. But by building onto the experience and expertise from different IMI projects, for example, and Tanya is here to present later on H2O, for example, building on the expertise from the International Data Space Association or the Global Alliance for Genomics and Health, we're taking those things together in a new format. As I like to say, it's a little bit like architects. They also build unique houses, but most of the material that they use exists already, and they just combine it in a novel way. And that's exactly the way we are aiming to do it in IDERHA. And hence all these partners have come together, giving their background, giving their expertise, and really taking this forward and bringing it into IDERHA. How are we set up? We felt that this is important for you to see from our philosophy perspective. If you look at the blue boxes is really the technical applications and the integrated way to bring things forward. It's the infrastructure and the tools for the integration of data. That's work package 1. And using that infrastructure for the integration of data to then develop algorithms in a federated way that then demonstrate the value and the applicability and the scalability of that platform. The focus will be on lung cancer and on patients with lung cancers, and very much important, and here Rada and the team are leading very much. So it's about how can we bring health data standards and interoperability to ensure that all of these aspects work together, because it's like a clockwork. If one of these aspects do not work, then everything is doomed to fail. And I think the ones on the call know this very well, given your background and your expertise in that field. All of that is surrounded by an ethics and legal framework, because even if you've got the best technical standards and approaches, if the ethics and the legal framework doesn't work and doesn't apply, we are obviously not ready to succeed. And we are dealing with patient and healthcare data, which is obviously one of the most precious goods to be really, really careful about. We believe with the federated approach, an important step has been done, an important first step. But then we are working really with experts from an ethics and legal framework taken from there. In addition to that, obviously, there's a lot going on in the policy environment from the EHDS and the AI Act, etc. How can all of that be brought into the decision making so that we fit into the environment? And then obviously, we are paying a lot of attention to expectation, dissemination, and communication. And here again, thank you to Rada for making this presentation possible as well, to really share a little bit of the work where you're playing an important role. So that's how we set up IDERHA. And to put it into the framework, where it plays and where it stands within the overall key European initiatives. We are part of European Beating Cancer Plan from Europe, focusing on really driving lung cancer from the late stage where it's been identified, in most cases, to an earlier stage where the treatment and survival rate are much higher. That's where we're really trying to aim for, and you will see this in a minute in our use cases. And obviously, the European Health Data Space, it's going to be there very soon. And it's an amazing political initiative. I truly believe that this is a fantastic opportunity to bring Europe on the forefront, as no other region can be, giving the way our whole environment is set up, and where we with IDERHA believe we can potentially help to demonstrate what an implementation could look like. So that's the larger framework from both from a disease, but also from a policy and technical perspective. And talking about the European Health Data Space, we are aiming to align as much as possible with the European data space principles. Obviously, these are developing as we speak, but we are also flexible and taking it from there. And I think the timing is just perfect. And also the timing of the initiation of IDERHA was not a coincidence, because the call from the Innovative Health Initiative that we responded to and have been able to win was shortly after the decision was made by the European Union to take forward the European health data space. And what we're really aiming to do is build a health-specific ecosystem from a rules perspective, from common standards and practices. Phil will go into that later on. From an infrastructure and governance framework, it's really about empowering individuals for the access and control perspective, support free movement. We are a pan-European approach, so our data providers and the first use cases come from countries such as Spain, Finland, and also Germany. We're aiming to bring in Austria is obviously also very much on the forefront. So really, it's going to be across borders, and then enable health data reused in a consistent, trustworthy, and trust is really what we are paying a lot of attention to, because we believe, and I think Austria has done a fantastic work there. If you can establish trust about health data, then citizens or patients will be much more likable to share their health data, make it available for, no, sharing is the wrong word, actually make it available for research use to drive innovation. Sharing means to lose control of it. Here, the data stays really where it is. So we really aim to set up a network for researchers, industry, policymakers, regulators, patients, whoever it is, on a common governance model with standard data formats that then can be accessed and used for research. The way we aim to drive it and draw it in a very simple way, if there's a data requester, a researcher, and would like to have access to data from, for example, hospital, no matter where the hospital has the data, on-premise or in the cloud, that there will be a clear governance principle under which conditions that data can be accessed, that is checked, and then offer the technical solution to access that data. And the way it will work is really about working in a federated way, that an analyst request is sent to the data holder. It's calculated and all the assessment is done on site, on premise for the data holder, and then the results are sent back. So the source data is only accessed, not shared, really following the federated principle. And we are using existing solutions like FAIR, principles from the Global Alliance of Genomic and Health, or the International Data Space Organizations. And all our technical infrastructure is built in a modular way in order to allow for further technical innovation that will obviously take place on a daily basis. If we then go into IDERHA, what we are aiming to do and what is our approach, and if you look at the top, this is what we've been asked: access to diverse data at scale, develop a scalable open platform, develop tools that are on needs for patients, clinicians, research, and shape policy. We are doing this by actually accessing really diverse data. We are accessing electronic health records, focusing on the OMOP data model and FHIR. We are focusing on imaging, using the DICOM standards. We are working with wearables for patients, driving a major study around it, and we will enable individual patient health data access via a startup that we're working with, and we are aiming to access clinical trial data and make this available via this IDERHA platform that you see in the middle. Again, based as a strong foundation, the common governance and legal framework, enabling the use of the technical infrastructure to drive the development and use of data-enabled healthcare solutions. And the healthcare solutions that we are developing within IDERHA, I would like to focus on the three of them. It's 2 algorithms: lung cancer risk prognosis algorithms. So any normal citizen can be identified what is his or her risk to develop lung cancer based on the information from the electronic health records, to thereby potentially be included in a screening. And then within the screening, where the European standard is really on CT imaging, and it's really fantastic that we've got the leading clinicians that are driving the lung cancer screening in Europe within IDERHA as our clinical experts. really driving the risk prediction algorithm around on the basis of CT screening. So this is very much the focus on the beginning of a potential disease. And then we are using the late stage lung cancer patients, which are treated with chemotherapy. They will allow for remote patient monitoring, where we combine wearables that deliver a lot of health data, and then do the engagement with these patients via an app, so that there's basically a 24/7 monitoring of these patients and direct interaction with the clinicians to allow for fast interaction if any complications develop. We will further develop infrastructure and tools, data exchangeability and connectivity. Here it's about focusing on the OMOP common data model for medical devices. And as I said before, the patient app about enabling to access data from individual patients and their health records. So I could, for example, decide, hey, I would like to share my health data and make this via the app in a secure way so that this data cannot be used, but allowing for this individual approach that we know from other areas in digitalization as well. Having said all of this, we believe, and the feedback has been very positive, this kind of approach allows for very solid and good discussions with health authorities, patients, and clinicians for discussions. How can we make such solutions available for citizens and patients? What does it need? What kind of pitfalls are we facing? What kind of hurdles need to be taken in a sensible way that these ambitions can become true with the highest quality standards? And obviously here the initiative of the European Health Data Space is a fantastic opportunity to drive these discussions together. Having said that, and diving a little bit deeper into the algorithms for the federated infrastructure is one part, but we really believe only doing real-world evidence is not enough. Everything is going to be AI in the foreseeable future. The data volumes are going to be larger and larger, and really with an idea where we're following the principle of compute to data versus data to compute. We're working here as we speak with large hospital groups and regions and country in the EU to access those huge data lakes and data sources that they have on their promises or within their region, with the algorithm being managed from a central AI manager, with the algorithm going to the first data holder, doing the analysis, coming back, leveraging those results for the second data holder, taking the results from the two of them, going to the third one, and doing this in a continuous way to really drive an overall assessment of all data together. But again, in a federated way versus in a centralized way, which obviously comes with a lot of technical implications that need to be solved, and an infrastructure that can allow for this, and also seeing what are the individual requirements from the data holder perspective. So that's an exciting exercise which is running extremely well, and I'm always amazed how the different groups work together to make this happen. Coming very quickly to how are we approaching IDERHA from a technical infrastructure, which is probably of higher interest for you. Again, here it's a very, not detailed or technical detail, but much more a schematic approach. We will have a platform user request that will sign on with its identity and the visa to make clear what kind of data would like to have. We're using the Global Alliance for Genomic and Health Passport. That will be on the IDERHA landing page. And here, if I'm a researcher, would show what I would like to do and submit my data and algorithm request that will go then basically to the central node, and the central node is forwarding to the federated node of data provider that is extracting the data that I need, again, following the data minimization principle from their data lake or database, does the computation on their side, and then the results are getting to the central node. So again, here it's a big firewall to only have the results exiting the side of the data holder. At the current stage, we're working with NVIDIA Flare, but the approach will be technology agnostic. And then those results go back and will be made available to the data requester. Again, as you've seen it also, how our work packages are set up all around with a common governance framework to really allow for an easy collaboration between data requester and data holder. It's always for us that the combination of the governance framework, the legal frameworks, and the technology together in order to allow for these access, because obviously there are, for good reasons, very strong regulations that we want to follow as much as anyhow possible to maximize the trust for patients and the data holder, that we can focus as much as possible onto the clinical research. Where are we at the moment? Progress and results. 18 months into the project, we've started April last year. Can't believe this is just such a short time, but it's amazing what has been developed. We've got a prototype of the IDERHA platform architecture. I've seen it working, the different aspects that you've just seen, the landing platform, the central part, and then the connection to the data holders. We're currently working with synthetic data, leveraging this approach as well as much as possible. Also obviously coming with huge benefits from a GDPR perspective. We tested different federated solutions, focusing very much on NVIDIA Flare at the moment, and then setting up the nodes for data providers, different approaches within the different data providers, because they have different infrastructures and also legal requirements. And then we are prototyping the Citizens app. The Citizens apps is the one that I stated before, where I, for example, as a citizen, can make my data available to other people that would like to do research. If I was, for example, a lung cancer patient, I could say I give all my health data to someone, so that the direct connection with researchers can be done in a secure way via the Citizen app. And we really have the prototype set up and are ready to go with the remote patient monitoring, which is the approach that I shared earlier, where we are driving a monitoring of late-stage lung cancer patients to see how that actually works with them, for them, and the clinicians, in order to see, is this a good way to further decentralize care, but also optimizing the response rate to overcome any kind of complications. And with that, I would like to hand over to my dear colleague, Phil Gribbon.
Thank you very much, Christian, and thank you as well, Rhoda, and the team for this kind invitation. So I'm just looking. I think you have to stop sharing.
Yeah, I'm just seeing where I can stop this.
I can share.
You just.
And I think it's coming. Can people see my screen okay?
Yeah, if I've stopped sharing, then it's good.
Okay, thanks a lot. So thank you, Rhoda. So, Christian, I think has really nicely described what we're doing in IDERHA to actually establish the infrastructure and establish the services. But essentially, there's no point in doing this unless we can access data, and this is something that I think those of us who've been involved in other European projects have seen that this is very much a bottleneck in the overall process. So, creating an appropriate data access and data governance procedure is critical for the IDERHA platform, and it's something that we've invested a lot of time and effort in. And we have teams of extremely talented lawyers who are really working together in a collaborative way. I think it's probably the best I've ever seen in any of these projects, to really try and come up with a data governance framework and a model that allows us not just to work with the data sets that are available within and there are multiple data providing partners within IDERHA, and we've identified actually I think over 2 million separate patient lung cancer related data sets that we would have access to ultimately, but not just partners within IDERHA, but also partners within networks that are linked to IDERHA. And this would be, for instance, the SOLIS consortium, or those who are involved with the UK consortium. And these data access providers who are providing the access by a federation, and as Christian says, it's a case of bringing the compute to the data rather than the data to the compute, are coming from academic, clinical, and also industrial partners as well. And we, as a consortia, have deliberately decided at the outset of the project that we didn't want to invest significant amounts of resource into curation of data. So we set certain standards in terms of the data types that we would be able to work with. And primarily, as Christian mentioned, that's OMOP data and DICOM data, and there's specific other programs out there which have been involved, such as Eden, for instance, where there was a significant amount of resource was invested in all mapping of data sets. And it's our intention to engage with many of those institutes and those partners within those Eden networks and the successors to Eden Foundation to be able to provide access and data infrastructure and data use infrastructure for those partners. And we're achieving this through a clinical data network that we've established through the help of our colleagues from the medical school in Berlin. So I think it's extremely important, and this is the work, I'm really talking about the work of RADA and my colleagues here in work package 4 on data standards within IDERHA. It's extremely important to look at the data standards and interoperability. If we're providing a platform for accessing heterogeneous data, then we have to make sure that that data is accessible and interoperable. So in terms of what our goals are, so we have quite lofty goals in terms of the way that we want to specify the standards for data exchange and the associated models. There's a strong focus on data verification within our community, and myself, I came from the sort of FAIR community, and I was involved with the FAIR Plus project, where we developed a whole series of tools and a cookbook to aid in understanding of the FAIR level of data and how to improve that fairness, and ultimately to improve the reuse of data and the use of data outside of the original application. And to drive that, we're in the process of creating a harmonization toolkit so that data can be IDERHA ready, so external data providers will know what to do to get their data ready. But also we're concerned very much about data quality assessment, and this is something that's also happening in parallel projects such as Quantum, where we have good connections to, and we're establishing a data quality framework and recommendations around that. And this is especially important in AI applications, where the impact of poor data quality or missing data in particular can really mean that the algorithms are compromised, and this can be further exacerbated by the fact that we're working within a federated context. We don't want to be one of these projects that sets up a large, expensive infrastructure, and then at the end of the project funding, everything just evaporates into thin air. So we're spending a lot of time looking at how we can ensure the sustainability of the data and the platform, and how we drive aspects like interoperability, and this sort of work which has happened within the EOS Live projects that's fed into our decision making there. And to help external organizations understand what the necessary data standards are, we're also providing training on data standardization and verification. So the outputs that we're expecting from our interoperability and data standards work package are a framework, especially for aligning what we're doing with IDERHA with emerging EHDS standards, a manual to help codify the output, and also what's extremely important is our data management plan. This is a bit of a jewel in the crown of what we've been doing within data standards. If something related to data, if an operation related to data isn't in the data management plan in IDERHA, then it doesn't happen. We've got a very strict control over that, and we're using that data management plan as a way to simplify our overall data governance and legal framework for sharing and accessing data. So we're putting many of the technical aspects of working with data directly into the data management plan, really describing the data flows in detail, and then letting that help inform this change. Yeah, so what have been the progress and achievements so far with respect to from the data management interoperability? We have our data management plan. We're actually onto the second version of that now, and we're really trying to align that with our data protection impact assessment, and also our data sharing agreements. We're in the process of generating a roadmap for aligning IDERHA with what's happening in EHDS, and also looking at parallel projects such as TADAS, and we've been extremely active in understanding which external projects are relevant to us. I think those of us who are involved in this field know that there's many projects which are out running at the moment, essentially looking at creating prototypic secure processing environments and data infrastructures for sharing data along the lines of IDERHA, especially within the EOS community. There's 3 projects running at the minute, and there's other parallel projects running across the EU. So we're engaging actively with those projects, and I'll show you a few examples of that later on, which is actually led by RADA and also colleagues from the HS Booster project. We're really developing our data quality assessment. We're not doing this alone. It's in collaboration with the Quantum project, and we have one of our partners, IHD, which is leading those efforts. And that's sort of helping us come up with recommendations around health data standards and the long-term sustainability of the data platform. All of the data sets that we're going to be working with within IDERHA, and those are incoming data sets, as well as the data sets within the consortia, are subject to a verification assessment using the FAIR DSM model that was developed within the dataset maturity model that was developed in the context of FAIR Plus. So those are all ongoing tasks around the data sets and their interoperability. So next slide, please. So one thing I'll just briefly mention, but it is an important point, is our work on policy recommendations. So, you know, we're not a lobbying organization. Our primary purpose really is to generate a series of recommendations that we hope will help enable the acceptance by regulatory and HTA authorities and decision makers when it comes to paying around the use of real-world evidence and real-world data, and also the application of machine learning and artificial intelligence algorithms on those data sets, recognize those and build a consensus on how to use them effectively. The way we're going about that is through identifying policy gaps and best practice, and that was being completed in the first year. And now we're in the middle of building a stakeholder consensus, and there's been a number of workshops involving key stakeholders from industry, from regulatory authorities, from clinical groups, from academics, and from researchers, and on how we what the appropriate policies are for data access, sharing, and use of data. And ultimately, those findings will be condensed into policy recommendations that hopefully accelerate the development and the acceptance and use of heterogeneous health data. Next slide, please. The work of the so this is the work of the policy recommendation team. It's work package 6, and this is really, we have a very strong external influence and guiding hand, as it were, within that group. There's something that we're calling the Integrated Data Access Governance Council, or IDAC Council. And what they're doing is they're looking at the methodologies being applied by the group, by the team. They're drawn from senior leadership within the actual participating organizations, but these are individuals who are not directly involved in the project, but they're from the senior leadership teams, and also external groups from clinical groups, from regulators, etc. And they're looking at questions around health data access and sharing, and looking at the consensus and recommendations are coming from that, as well as criteria on the acceptability of real-world data and real-world evidence. And also the interplay and the relationship between emerging EHDS and the AI regulations. So there's a monitoring process where we analyze and look at alignment, integration, and ensure that those policy recommendations are fit for purpose and relevant to the changing environment as it's happening. And there's been some excellent recent deliverable reports around that. I've had the pleasure to and the honor to read, and I think that group's doing a fantastic work. And you know, we're really hoping that these recommendations are something that can be taken up and realistically implemented by the various stakeholders around the HDS and those involved in HTA and decision making. So next slide, please. So I think one further thing, and this is the last part, and again, I'm really talking about work that's been driven by RADA and her colleagues, and also our colleagues in the HS Booster, is what we really want to avoid, and I think the community should avoid, is that IDERHA and others such as UCAIM or Big Picture or Escape or other projects which are working in the big data setting, looking and working towards developing HDS compliant infrastructure and resources, that we don't all just create a new series of silos, and that would be a really bad thing. And we have to be outward looking within our projects and ensure that we're aligning in terms of driving interoperability and our use of standards between those projects. I think that's extremely important. So next slide, please. So we've engaged with a whole set of projects, the Escape, iHelp, and this again has been facilitated by our colleagues at the HS Booster. These projects, next slide, please. These projects are all, typically looking at in lung cancer cases as well. So, and this is something that we should also mention about the IDERHA project, is that whilst we're being configured to work primarily with data sets from lung cancer, we're a platform which is in the future will also be able to work with data from other cancers as well as other indications. So we're not specific for any one indication. We want to be open to different communities wishing to share and access data, whether it's from the cardiovascular disease area or from metabolic disease or whichever disease area. And our infrastructure has been configured in order to support that. But we're looking at the moment for synergies amongst EU projects in cancer use cases, and through the work of HS Booster and team, we've reached out to all of these different projects and worked with them to understand which standards they were using, in what context, for what purposes. So next slide, please. And it was clear that there was a subset of standards primarily based upon HL7 Fire, but also DICOM and the OMOP Common Data Model. We also looked at how the groups were working with data catalogs and ontologies and the use of standards like DCAT, etc. And we also assessed which other standards, and there was some more obscure standards that were being used, but typically there was good alignment in terms of the data standards and models that were being used. So next slide, please. So we went through, assessed each one, ensured that there's good communication between the different projects and a common understanding which standards were being used and where, and also areas where standards might be developed and helped and enhanced and improved, particularly, for instance, in working with data coming from wearables, where some of the existing standards don't cater for the full needs of the data sets. Next slide, please. So we were able to summarize this work in a nice publication that was recently presented in a very nice conference in Athens. We're going to, in the future, is focus on the semantic interoperability by increasing and looking more detail around health ontologies. I think we recognize the need for tools to support the use of standards, and that's something that I think that's very important. I know RODA is in particular is driving that, and we'll be looking forward more to look at health ontologies and also wearable devices and other devices, emerging devices which are currently being used and could be used in the future to generate data which is being used in health-based decision making. So I think that's the next slide is the last slide. Thanks for the funding, and hopefully myself and Christian will be happy to answer any questions that will come from the team. Thank you.